I'm delighted to be here with you this morning to tell you a little bit more about how the ABPI is approaching disclosure code requirements for 2016 and our ambitions to build a central platform for disclosures. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of our journey so far. So the ABPI has required aggregate disclosure of payments for the last 2 years, and I think this kind of early step of making this information publicly available has been quite useful for our member companies in the sense that it's given them an opportunity to help consolidate their data capture processes as we prepare for individual disclosures in 2016, and also from kind of the medical community side to raise awareness of kind of the direction of travel of here, because transparency tends to be one of those areas that doesn't go backwards. So I think the writing's on the wall in terms of where this is going, as well as it being quite a tangible commitment from industry towards greater transparency. When we knew that EFPIA was going to be disclosing, requiring disclosure of payments for individually named healthcare professionals in 2016, we wanted to get a sense from the healthcare professional community whether or not there'd be appetite to make this information publicly available, and if so, should we do that through the medium of a central platform? Should there be a role for healthcare professionals? I'll tell you a little bit more about the outcomes of that shortly, but the overwhelming response was quite positive. So that really gave us the mandate to move forward. Concurrently, when we were getting to the end of that consultation, EFPIA's General Assembly approved the final version of the disclosure code in June of last year, which required payments to be made on companies' websites as the default position. But there's also a provision in there, as I'm sure you know, that if a platform exists by the relevant governmental, regulatory, or professional body, that disclosures can then be instead made there. So that was quite an important question for our Board of Management, is how do we make that information available? Do we go with the default position on company websites, or do we try to develop a central platform? And the discussion really hinged upon around how do we make this information available in the most meaningful way to patients and other stakeholders that will be interested in it, and ultimately felt that that was through a central platform because it consolidates that information in one place. If you're a patient and you want to know what your GP is earning, you can search by name, practice, or company and have all of that information collated and tabulated in one place. So we transposed EFPIA disclosure code requirements into the ABPI code of practice by the end of last year, and kind of then moved into a system design phase. We're going to be working with a third-party supplier that we'll announce in the coming weeks to help us build this. And now we're probably in this phase, in this stakeholder engagement and communications, that box kind of in the bottom right-hand corner. And this is, to Richard's point earlier, to really drive awareness within member companies around what's required, what the central platform will look like, how it will work, as well as with the healthcare professional community, so that they understand what this means for them and what the impact will be. And we really have an ambition to co-create this in partnership with the medical community, so their support is extremely important. For the next year, we're going to go into kind of systems design and delivery, and then we hope to have the platform up and running by the beginning of Q3 2015. I mentioned that we ran a consultation with healthcare professionals. This went from January of last year through to July, and the whole purpose was to gauge whether there'd be appetite and support for public disclosure. Should payments be transparent? Should they be publicly declared? Should that be through the form of a singly searchable database? Should this be something that applies to all life sciences commercial organizations, or should it just be the pharmaceutical industry? Should healthcare professionals have a proactive role to play? And we also asked whether there would be an impact on collaboration as a result of making this information publicly available. We had over 1,000 individual responses and over 30 organizational responses from some of the kind of leading medical groups in the UK, like the British Medical Association, the Royal College of Physicians, the Royal College of General Practitioners. And overall, the response was quite positive, which was great for us because it gave us kind of that mandate to move forward. So almost 90% of respondents agreed with the principle that payments should be transparent, and almost 80% of respondents felt that these payments should be publicly declared. When we asked, should that be through the form of a centrally hosted, singly searchable database, almost 80% of respondents agreed. And again, almost 80% of respondents felt that healthcare professionals should have some sort of proactive role to play in the system, whether that's validating the financial data that's been submitted or through something else. And all of this, kind of these responses have been quite useful for us in shaping what the system will look like and how it will actually work in practice. But despite the broad support from the healthcare professional community and from our members in the Board of Management, there are a few fundamental issues that I believe we need to proactively anticipate and address in order to ensure success of all of this. And one of these is consent to disclose. So as I'm sure you're aware, healthcare professionals have to provide their consent to have this information be made publicly available before it can be disclosed. The most practical way to do that is through changing company contracts and agreements. The ABPI Legal Expert Network has developed a model clause that our members will be able to use in their contracts as an example and a template. But I think the challenge for us is that right now we have no understanding of what percentage of healthcare professionals will want to have that information withheld, whether that's 5% or 75%. And if it's the latter, then that has, I think, quite considerable chance of undermining the whole purpose of this and really demonstrates why we need to work together to drive a culture where financial transparency is embraced and accepted as the norm. I mean, my personal feeling is that this will become something kind of like wearing your seatbelt. It'll become socially unacceptable to not do it, but right now it's really an unknown. So what's required here is strong leadership, and this is something that Richard alluded to a few moments ago, that we need leadership from industry and leadership from the healthcare professional community in order to drive this cultural shift in behavioral change where financial transparency is embraced. I think we know the direction of travel here and where we're going, and the question is, do we want to be dragged there kicking and screaming, or do we want to go there proactively and shape what that looks like? We really want to deliver this in partnership and co-create this system with the medical community in the UK. And we've started that engagement process with the consultation, and now we're moving into, okay, what does it look like in practice? We held a roundtable with a lot of the leading Royal Medical Colleges and healthcare professional groups in April to discuss what our plans look like, what the system will look like and how it will work, what the role for the healthcare professional community should be, and how do we drive awareness right down to the individual doctor level, right, the grassroots level of what we're doing and what this means. And the groups in attendance were very supportive, and our next steps are to be engaging kind of on a one-to-one basis to talk about this communications aspect and how we can drive that within the respective memberships. We've got a long road ahead of us. We know where we're going. It certainly won't be without its challenges. But I think, we're in a car here, and we have an opportunity to do one of two things. As I said, transparency is one of those areas that doesn't tend to go backwards. The car has no reverse gear. We can either be passengers in that car, or we can get in the driver's seat. And I think EFPIA's commitment to the disclosure code and the ABPI's plans for a central platform are certainly tangible demonstrations of us getting in that driver's seat, which is quite exciting. And we need to do that in partnership with healthcare professionals to really drive that right culture for this to land successfully.